I keep in my OneNote the prompts that I use regularly. And when I update the prompt, I update my OneNote because sometimes you'll have built a prompt and you learn as you get your outputs. And so then when I get to the end and I actually have the result that I want, I then ask the LLM to rewrite the prompt for me.
Well, you're very welcome to another episode of Hiring Excellence. I'm Johnny Campbell, your host for this podcast and CEO of Social Talent. So today we're going to be talking about AI for TA leaders. Why? Because you know what? We talk about AI for recruiters all the time. Why should recruiters use AI? How should they use AI? What tools are there? But nobody seems to talk about how leaders in TA should be using AI for them, except for our guest today. She talks about it. She's passionate about it. She's been getting into this over the last year or so. She's going to be sharing some of those stories, warts and all, with us. It's my pleasure to welcome a good friend and someone I'm excited to have on the podcast for the first time, and who pointed out to me 6 months ago, Johnny, why haven't you had me on your podcast? And I was like, oh, Melissa, would you do this? And yeah, she embarrassed me, and I was like, you know what? You're so right. I should have had you a long time ago. She's always super busy, but my God, when this person talks, you're going to love what she has to share. Melissa Thompson is the Global Head of Talent Acquisition for Ford. She has worked in several major corporations in different industries over the last few years, and she'll be sharing that perspective with us today. Melissa, thank you for joining us in the podcast. It is a pleasure after 6 years to finally have you. Maybe share with the audience a little bit about yourself and your career.
For sure. I'm delighted to be here, and 6 months isn't all that long. It's all good. I believe in your powers. Let's see. So I have been running talent acquisition at Ford for the last 5 years, and it has been a roller coaster ride transformation journey. But you know that when you can see little things come to fruition, it's sort of like a spark. I get little sparks of joy as I see things come over the finish line. And you mentioned it, but in the arc of my career, I've worked for several technologies companies, but I've also worked for um, Bank of America. I worked for Hewitt on the RPO side, which gave me really great insights into how the RPO model works. I worked at Dell in the very early days. My very first um, talent acquisition or recruiting focused job was actually at the Dial Corporation, the soap company. So I've run through how you do talent acquisition or recruiting in different ways, given different levels, different industries, different volumes, and different sizes of teams.
Melissa, like when I think about AI and the topic, first of all, like how big a deal is it or isn't it in the context of your career? You've run TA in different organizations, different industries, big and small, global, national roles, all sorts of stuff. Is this just another technology? How would you rank it against other innovations or change you've seen throughout your career? Put some context to just that AI framing first.
Well, for those that are old enough, the shift from Lotus 123 and spreadsheets that managed your recruiting to an ATS managing your recruiting, the shift where the internet came in and people were like, oh, it's not going to really have a big impact. And then, a couple of years later, we're all doing email and building websites. This is that shift on steroids because it sort of embeds itself into everything. And if you're not thinking about how it can help you, you're missing out. But conversely, if you're using it to make decisions for you, you're going to get tripped up. Because as you and I both know, AI can hallucinate. And if you're not inspecting what you put in to ensure that what comes out is the reality, that that way lies trouble.
I agree with you. And I think we're learning this over the 4 years or so nearly that we've had consumer AI, so to speak, with us and in front of us. And I agree, it is more of a universal technology rather than a point solution, to give it language that we use in many ways. But your point around there's a wrong way, and people still use it the wrong way, and then there's a right way. It is interesting. I'm going to maybe ask you to start with a story, and this is probably the only piece we'll stick to our plan on. But Project Bengal or Bengal,
Yeah.
tell me about that.
Well, first, it's a play on a Bengal tiger because we built a tiger team to help with a specific challenge that we had. I have said I love working at Ford, but one of our honest challenges is that we don't have a workforce plan. So sometimes I will wake up on a Monday and hundreds of new words have arrived over the weekend. And that is really what Q1 felt like, on a loop, on a loop, on a
Mm.
loop. And we could not just add resources as the way to solve the problem. And so I call it playing tennis when you're talking to the AI and it's telling you something, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. You need to go a different way. So I actually played tennis with my AI partner to say, if I'm not going to add resources, what are other ways that I could begin to solve this problem and alleviate the volumes for the recruiters? I'll pause there and say one of the things that is both good and bad at Ford is we have an amazing brand, we have an amazing name, but that means we get hundreds of applicants for almost every single rec. So a recruiter that is running 25 recs and is getting 100 candidates a day is just drowning. So we built Project Bengal to be um, an agile recruitment support model where every Monday there are three recruiters and a project manager who analyze what's going on and then reach out to recruiters to say, here's where we're going to help you with reviewing your resumes that are top of the inbox. Here's where we're going to help you with phone screens. Here's where we see this position's been open for more than 60 days and you're not yet an interview. Let's have a quick conversation and figure out how we can get you those candidates. So those are really the three avenues they've been using. And it's been super interesting because some of the recruiters, I love y'all, but some of the recruiters are hesitant, right? They're like, no, I got this. Dude, your job's been open for 92 days and you still don't have anybody in interview. You don't got this, right? So it's how do we get them more comfortable with using the sourcing solution? And it's been running for about 10 weeks now. And the first 5 weeks, it was really a lot about that resume screening. And then you could see the shift starting to happen where they were doing much more interventions in the phone screening, helping screen 10, 20, 40 candidates a week. And now that we're moving into week 12, you see that recruiters are now looking at peers going, wait a minute, what are you doing? They're like, well, Project Mingle helped me clean out my inboxes and they helped me identify. So it's almost like the pull is starting to happen because they're seeing their peers work. So I love doing this kind of thing where Mondays they decide what recs they're working on. Wednesdays they do a check in, what's the status. Fridays they close out. Mondays they start a new set. So it's a clean week over week.
And so you mentioned, obviously, you started this by asking in a tennis match your AI agent for support and ideas. But how did that then evolve into you more regularly using AI, and did that impact how you support the Bengal project itself?
You know what's interesting is you have to be careful not to go down the AI rabbit hole because there's so much there. You could just spend hours and hours doing analysis and understanding. But I actually came to this by putting in a rec report for a certain week and putting in a rec report from a couple weeks prior and having it compare like where are things stuck. And because we have a specific field that is the TA recruiting status field, and it tells you, well, it's supposed to tell you where the status is in the funnel. And so the AI uncovered, like, these all are stuck. They have to be stuck because the status they were in 2 weeks ago is the same status today. And so it's sort of to me, anytime you're using AI, it's an iterative process, right? You've got to, you start with a problem statement or a question. Um, and you taught me this. But since then, I've taken lots of classes that support what you taught me, which is you have to give it a role and you have to give it context, right? And if you give it this prompt with its role and its context, and here's what I'm trying to understand, your last sentence should be, and ask me any questions before you start doing analysis, right? Because otherwise, it just runs in some direction. You're like, yeah, that's not it at all. Um, you and I have also played with the different types, and I find the reasoning model that Claude uses just makes me more happy than any of the other models. The challenge for me is sometimes I'll use Claude to start the work, and then I'll go to Copilot because it's got the strong connectivity to Excel. I mean, not so much PowerPoint, but Excel and Word. And so I play between them in order to get to a final output. So 6 weeks into Project Bengal, I realized that the team lead was manually pulling down a rec report and figuring out using a pivot table which things she should do. And I was like, that seems 1985. So I went in and built a how do we uncover the wrecks that should be in Bengal. And then I got her on a call and I said, this is what I did. This is how this works. She's like, that's so cool. And she's taken it and she's moved it to the next level, which is something that I really like to do because you've probably heard me describe myself as stractical. I'm strategic and tactical. I can go down and I can go deep, but I want to be able to take the time to come back up and be strategic. So sometimes I'll go down and then hand something off so that someone else can take it to the tactical solution.
I love that. It actually sounds like they're very 2022. Doing VLOOKUPs and tables. I'm the same, Melissa. I was talking about this today to one of my leaders and interrogating Salesforce data. We use Salesforce as our CRM, and we have it connected through an MCP into Claude. And I don't log into Salesforce anymore. I don't use reports in Salesforce. I just ask business questions of Claude. It pulls the data. So I was able to ask it a question that I couldn't run a report on in Salesforce because it's a really complicated thing. I wouldn't even know where to begin to build a report on it. I have to think about the report schedule. I don't have to think about that. I could just ask it. And when I asked the LLM this question, it came back with the answer, and it said to me, I love this, said, you're asking the wrong question, Johnny. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, I love this. This is like, but actually I was in a cab yesterday with another one of my team, and we were chatting about how the personalities of the LLMs changes and is different. And she was pointing out that ChatGPT tells her how amazing she is. Claude will say, no, you're not thinking straight. This is big. This is ridiculous. Gives critical feedback on things. Again, it's built for business. It's real like,
Yes.
hey, we're doing work here. We're going to talk serious stuff. Whereas ChatGPT is like, Melissa, you're amazing. That's such a great question. How clever are you?
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
it's not just what you do, it's
Yes.
the tool you use and moving between the LLMs. I love that. That's a real sign of maturity. I want to point out something here, Melissa, that you told me, which I thought was super interesting and unusual. You had shared, certainly at one point, you were probably the biggest user of AI in your team. That's not normally the case. Normally, there's some bright, let's face it, young recruiter who's big into AI, who she or he says, we should all use this. And the leader's like, what are you doing over there? Your situation was a little bit different. You at one point certainly were the biggest user and advocate and were trying to get others excited. And actually, that's something you felt was a good thing. And actually, you'd like to encourage more leaders to do that. So walk me through that, explain that logic to me.
First, I'll just give a nod to DP. I'm not going to tell you his name. I'm just give his initials. He's like one of the people that is on the team who he has 30 recs, but he still likes to play in the I'm not sure, but I think the volume challenge is part of the reason why the team had not started testing how can
Right.
AI work for me, how can it partner with me. And so coming into this year, I really challenged myself to think about what things can I do and then show, because then others will want to do, right? If you can say it's not as hard as you're thinking, it's not that big a climb to throw the rec report in and pull out here's how many recs per recruiter. It's not that hard to then build a prompt that does that for you every week. And so what I started doing is these little experiments and then sharing the experiment. Um, the thing that was probably the biggest leap forward for us was when the CHRO challenged all of HR to do a problem solving project where each of the steps of the project required you to connect with the LLM and use it to get to your root cause solution. And we used fishbones, we used the five whys, we used all the old school tools. And my team looked at it and said, okay, according to the training, it's going to take me 12 or 14 hours to do this. And I could hear in the comments from the team that they were just like, I don't have time for that.
Mm.
So I went first. And then in our all hands meeting, I showed this is the problem I uncovered. This is the prompt I used. Here's how I got to my five whys. Here's how I got to my final problem statement. And then here's how I got to a solution, which we're now going to use because it uncovered for us that thing that I mentioned earlier, which is the interview stall problem, right? That something had gotten to interview, but it stalled, and you can tell by looking at the status and the
Mm.
comments in the rec report. And they were like, huh. And that actually created momentum. And then I did an offsite with my direct reports plus one, and we actually did some prompts together. So what I find is the way to make it not so big and scary is first to show, but then second to just do alongside so they can see how it could work and how it could save them time. Because if you just say it's going to save you time, there's no belief. But if you can give a specific example of, I did this, and then 2 weeks later, I did this, and then I came up with this, and this is my output, they're like, oh, I guess I could do that. So what's been interesting is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And so sometimes we'll be in like a staff meeting, my direct report staff meeting, and they'll raise an issue. And I'll say, couldn't you solve that using the LLM? Like you just put this in and then you do, and they're like, oh, yeah, I was trying to do it manually. And it's just, it's encouraging the mindset shift because yes, I'm using it for requisitions, but I'm not using it to
Mm.
understand. I did a listening tour with a bunch of hiring managers, and now I need to understand what the themes are and what am I going to do with those themes and how can I build an action plan? Well, that's another way to use it.
I love this. It points to a very classical thing, which is that your team will mimic the behaviors of the leader. The whole what you do, not what you say. And I've seen this myself, where you have a meeting about a topic, and someone comes and you will ask them, and if you keep asking them, so I assume you've already run this through Claude and got an answer. So where did that lead you? And they're kind of looking at you going, oh shoot, maybe I should have done that. But like you just keep saying it and they'll go, I'm never going to a meeting with Melissa without having done this because Ollie made look like a fool. I don't want to look like I did the last time. I got to figure out how to do this. If you don't have that pull as a leader, creating the need for them to go do that, it's unlikely to happen. Whereas if you're the leader, go, hey, I do this. It'd be foolish for anyone not to do this. So I'm not calling you out for lack of AI use, but I'm just going to make an assumption that we all live in a world where LLMs exist and can help us. And if you haven't used them, I need an explanation as to why. Why not? Because this is kind of crazy. I want to bring up something that came up in a conversation last week. We were in San Jose at a supper club dinner that we hosted. You've been at these in Dallas, and we had 17 folks sitting around, and we're talking about AI usage, of course. And I asked the group, um, how does the LLM charge show up in their P&L? And 16 of them said, well, we have a headcount allocation charge from finance. So there's an LLM charge to the business. How many people do I have working in TA multiplied by the individual charge is the charge I get. And one person said, yeah, mine tripled last month. They just tripled it from X to Y, which is 3X. And then somebody put her hand up and said, yeah, we've moved to usage. And I was like, tell me that story. And she shared a story that they're now actually metering who's using the LLM, which team, and now the charge is being more fairly distributed, which I actually think is going to be the future, right? You're going to actually be paying for the LLM usage that your team actually consumes versus a per user charge. And it made me think about something you shared with me, which is that you're quite considerate as to token usage. You don't want to hit your limits, but you don't want to waste tokens. So you've got to the point, Melissa, where you're thinking about that. So walk me through how you overcome limitations and how you think about tokens. And maybe third thing, and three questions in one is a disastrous interview strategy, but let's go for it. Also, do you think that's the way we're going to go? That one day you'll get a hit with a charge that actually is based on your team's usage, not just an allocation? And maybe you can expand and first of all tell me how you're even allocated that cost at the moment. I'll go back to question one. Tell me about your how you think about avoiding these enterprise limitation usages for tokens.
So interestingly, the way Ford has decided to do our LLMs is we don't see the charge in our P&L. It is
Ah,
sitting top line. So
okay.
it's not visible to me within my budget how much it's getting used. And I'm
Do you
not
think that'll
sure who
change?
had this token conversation with you, but it wasn't me.
No, 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 it wasn't you. So but you did share with me about you are trying to build prompts on prompts to not basically not waste tokens, not hit limits, and also not waste time. In terms of trying to basically, build on what you've done before, get to the
Yeah.
answer faster, not start from scratch each time, which has a knock-on effect of not wasting tokens and not reaching enterprise limits.
So we're doing two things, which I think is really fun. My chief of staff and DP, whose name I also still won't give you, are working together, and they're doing like a monthly AI engagement through Teams. So in the last 2 weeks, they put a very ugly prompt in, and then everyone is supposed to come in and say, "How would I repair this prompt?" And because recruiters and TA people are so competitive, um, I went in first and did my prompt repair. And then everybody was like, well, no, wait, I would do it this way. I would do it this way. And so I call that the pill in the peanut butter way of helping people think about how to build prompts better, right? They don't know that that's actually what we're teaching them. Instead, they're like, well, this is a competition, so I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do the best way I can. And then we keep a prompt library, right? So if somebody is money into a challenge, they're supposed to start in the library and see if there's already something there. And if you already have the prompt built and someone's already said, this works for me. I will say though, Johnny, I keep in my OneNote the prompts that I use regularly. And when I update the prompt, I update my OneNote because sometimes you'll have built a prompt and you learn as you get your outputs. And so then when I get to the end and I actually have the result that I want, I then ask the LLM to rewrite the prompt for me,
Hmm. Love that.
right? So then I'm in a better place and I'm closer to the right output the next time I run this prompt.
I
So in
love that.
terms of usage, I have big challenges personally, but I d- I don't have the problems quite as much professionally because of the way the umbrella works currently.
Do you see that issue of charging for LLMs and the LLM usage per team as coming into your world and forward, or generally in TA? If I just talk about TA in general, do you think, as we, because people talk about, oh, there's no charge for building these tools internally, but someone's paying for it, right? And you've heard these horror stories. I'm sure you've read them about companies who've spent 500 million without knowing they were spending 500 million, or other such crazy numbers, right? So maybe the usage isn't that high at the moment, but it could get there one day.
Yeah, I will say two things. One is I think that AI is going to become ubiquitous in the same way the internet is today. I mean, right now it's because of the way the data is chewing up the data center usage, because of how much memory and massive background power that it takes to actually do these AI prompts. Um, that's going to change, and it's going to change in multiple fast ways over the next, I wouldn't even say years. I think it's going to be a year and a half, and it starts to become, oh, we don't actually need to invest in all these big data centers, because now the chips are smaller, the chips are faster, they no longer get as hot, we no longer need this cooling thing. You know what I'm saying? I think
Mm,
that whole
mm.
thing is going to happen. For me at Ford, until it becomes more transparent to me that the usage is really high, I don't know how to intervene and impact it, right? But I understand the challenge is the best models eat the most usage, right? But the funny thing to me is I don't necessarily always need the answer fast. I just need the answer. I'm okay to walk away and come back. I mean, the way I would have done it before I had AI is it might have taken me a week to get it done, right? So I don't need it in 5 minutes. I don't even need it in an hour. If you want to think about that overnight while I'm sleeping, cool. So I think that's also a thing that we have to get more comfortable with, because right now we get the answer so fast that we're like, oh, then I'll just go get another answer. I'll just go get another one, right? Yeah.
You become addicted to it. You mentioned obviously the prompt libraries your team is now putting together, which is brilliant. And we see that evolution in teams as they use AI. They start to share them, put them together, build agents, get more mature on that, more policies, etc. Do you see this in your peer group in the business? That you have prompt libraries, because not as a recruiter, because recruiter prompt libraries are great to fill recs, but a leader's prompt library, do you, even if it's just one other person, do you have any of this going on where you can, or even in a network outside for it, folks, you can go, hey, what are you using to do this? Can I borrow your prompt? And do you see value in that?
I see value in it, but I don't see it happening yet. And
Okay.
part of it is, while we have a lot of people in Dearborn, a lot of the chief talent officers leadership team, we're all remote. And so we don't necessarily always get to this topic, but I have a feeling it'll come up on our next staff meeting because it's a good
I've
question, right?
I have a feeling you'll be the first contributor and probably the only contributor for the start, but it always starts with some person, right? So there's always a Melissa who starts the ball rolling, going, folks, I've 10 prompts. I have a colleague who gave me a Claude prompt and said, this reviews your email for the last 7 days, prioritizes what you should be looking at, suggests responses, and archive stuff that's not relevant. I was like, I'm never reading my email again. And I use it every morning. It's my summary. I now do it just on a daily basis. Like, give me my email summary. It just does all this work for me. That's anyone
Yeah.
who wants to do email. I'm like, wait, that's a universal prompt we all should be using. And then there's leadership versions, a lot around Excel, modeling data. I think they're all really good tools. You've perfected it. You can put a library together. So I love this, right? So you got the bug from a need, you got there, you've expanded with training, trial and error. You're at the point where you're asking AI to rewrite your prompts based on how it's seeing you use them. I love that. All right. Um, but you do want, I know this, you want your team to be using it more, and they are using it more, right? How are you solving for that? You mentioned obviously you're asking them to come with AI prep done, etc. But how else? Like, what have you done to drive this? What's working, and how do you see it evolving?
Yeah. So, one of our favorite sayings on my leadership team is inspect what you expect. So if I expect people to be using AI more, then I need to ask them, say, how are you using it now, and what value are you seeing? Um, So, two things. One is in team meetings, I have a little AI corner where someone is asked to come forward with, this is the prompt that I used, this is the result that I had. Because the more often that you do that, the more you're getting other people to see different ways of how it adds value. Your AI should be your assistant. You don't want it to necessarily completely solve a problem for you, but you do want it to be your thought partner, right? And it's like you say, I don't want Chat GPT to tell me how smart I am. I'm aware. Thank you. I want it to say, that's a great idea, but have you thought about this? Or I'm looking at it and there's a hole in it here. And so getting the team to hear the ways that you use AI in your everyday to simplify things, to remove administrative processes, to actually help you think about how you leap forward in things, right? I've asked the team every quarter we're going to think about what are three experiments that we're going to do that use AI at the center, but
Mm.
that help us move forward our transformation progress?
Love that. I know because it's interesting. I see a lot of organizations just start with usage and they're just gamifying or measuring. Did you log in? How many minutes? How many queries? And rewarding people. And arguably, that's an okay place to start, but it doesn't correlate with business value. It sounds like you're much more
Yeah,
aligned to what's the value we're getting out of this? How are we solving actual problems, not just
yeah.
who logged in the most to ChatGPT or Copilot this week? You seem to be much more
Yeah, you
business
remember
oriented.
when we first started using LinkedIn and that was it? And we were like, did you log in? Well, it doesn't matter if you logged in if you didn't actually use it.
All right, you logged
Yeah.
in 20 times. Well done. Did you fill a job? No. But I logged in 20 times. LinkedIn are happy. Nobody else is happy.
Yeah.
That doesn't really help. Well, so Melissa, I want to move to our last section, which I'm going to call our large language Melissa section or LLM section. And I want to get from you
Okay.
you mentioned already a couple of them, but share with me if you don't mind and share with our audience your kind of uh, top prompts. So you mentioned obviously manipulating data in Excel, big use case there. Asking the AI to brainstorm around a problem and do the tennis and back and forth, and your tips again around ask me questions that you think would help this, etc., is a really good sub area. What other things are you using it for that you think other TA leaders in particular could benefit?
So, I introduced the new metric quality of slate last year. And because it's a new metric and nobody's ever had it before, understanding how to improve it has been a bit of a challenge.
Mm,
So it's three things together. It's time to source, it's hiring manager to interview funnel conversion, and then it's
mhm,
the hiring manager sat. So I have been playing with how do I improve the middle part? How do I improve the conversion? Hiring manager review to interview. And after a month of looking at it, I thought maybe the better answer is to feed the whole metric in. The whole metric would be the time to source, the conversion, and then the hiring manager sat. And when I put all of that in, what it came back with was, yes, conversion is the biggest impact. And you have some recruiters that are, might I say, lazy in their conversions. So they're sending 50 resumes at the top of the funnel, and then they're having the hiring manager interview 8 at the bottom of the funnel. So the percentage may look right, but the numbers are telling a story, right? The other thing that it uncovered was that hiring manager sat scores, when they're there, have a big impact. So right now, 75% of the recs don't have a sat score. So if we improve the response rate, that will then drive up the quality of slate score. So I took my whole analysis and I handed it to our delivery leaders and I said, here is a playbook that says, this is what I uncovered. These are the ahas. This is the kind of coaching that needs to be done. Now let's see if once we start the coaching, it actually begins to move the
Mm.
needle on the number. Because my target quality of slate is 65, which doesn't seem like a very big number, but you got to start somewhere, right? Um, and it has popped up to 71. Now I want to know, how does it pop to 80, right? And
Mm.
I think doing these things, improving the response rate, doing the coaching with the recruiters, asking the recruiters not to, throw the spaghetti at the wall, all of those things are going to begin to have an impact.
What I'm hearing, Melissa, from your story as a TA leader is very similar to what we hear from individual recruiters, which is that you start with a lot of tasks around automation. So let's say Excel work, do some lookups, combine some tables. But really the work that is most valuable is in the elevate space, not the automate space. The elevate the work you do. Help me think better. Show me things I'm not thinking about. And I think when you move to elevate, when people think about automation, they're afraid of their jobs being lost to AI. They're thinking, well, if I automate the work, why do they need me? But when you've gone through that cycle and you're at elevation, that fear, it goes away because it's about, it needs me. I'm at the core. I'm driving this thing, but I'm leveraging all of its benefits, and it's helping me think. It's not thinking for me, to go full circle on a comment you made at the very start, because you do not want it to think for you. You want it to help you think. You still make decisions, you still think, and this can really, really enhance it, which I really love. It reminds me, and I don't know if you ever heard this episode, Melissa, but we Glenn Cathy on maybe a year ago, and Glenn had done some research, or he read some research. He didn't do it. He read it, that really struck with me. And it was describing the prompting skills that we all require as being really aligned with managerial skills. And he said the actual skills that you need to get the most out of AI are almost identical to the skills you need to manage a team. You have to decompose work, you have to explain it, you have to give context, you have to explain the output you want to deliver it in, what you want, what the result should look like, how it should be framed. It struck me that actually leaders like you, like myself, and others should be better at this, because that's what we do for a living, as opposed to just delivering individual work. Like, if I put that to you, does that make it sound, yeah, actually, that's what I'm doing here. I'm working with an agent. It's like managing somebody, except it's not a person. It's an AI tool.
Yeah,
Is that the way you
Johnny,
think?
I think because it's so new, your revelation is right, but everyone has to get to that revelation by playing with it and
Mm.
seeing how it works, and then, oh, so when I don't accept the first answer, when I ask deeper questions, when I go with my natural curiosity, then I come out with a better result. Because if I looked at the way I was using AI even just 8 months ago, it was very tactical. It was
Mm.
not really strategic. It was like, just do this thing for me because you can do it way faster than I
Mm.
can. It was, rewrite this email for me. And it was starting with the supper club that we had here in February that really helped me to think about, how can I elevate the way AI supports my day to day, and how can I move it from, as you said, from automation to a really elevated analysis, resolution, really thinking through, how does it help me level up?
Mm. I love this, Melissa. It's a guide for any TA leader or leader in general. We're at time and we've poured so many ideas. Actually, I have an idea for this. We're going to do it first. We're going to get AI to put together a one pager of Melissa's tips, advice on AI. We're going to put it in the description and show notes, wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. Click the description. We'll have a link there for you to access and download Melissa's top tips, guides, and structures to building prompts, applications for a TA leader. And I'll send this to you, and Melissa, and you can tell me if it's good with you and it captures everything. But let's start with that. Let's use AI to elevate this podcast to not just something people listen to or watch, but they have a downloadable resource they can bring back to their desks and make more use of it. How does that sound to you?
That sounds fantastic.
You're going to look for royalties and payback on this, Melissa. God
Exactly.
damn it.
That's
Melissa,
okay.
it's
You can pay me in wine. It's all good.
right. Next time, it's always a pleasure to spend some time with you. I got to spend some time with you a couple of weeks ago in Louisville. Looking forward to when we next catch up in person. Thank you so much again. And hopefully the next supper club we have in Dallas is going to inspire some fresh new ideas.
Excellent. Thanks.
And a huge thanks to you for joining us today. Hopefully that inspired you to get going, to start your leading by example approach to AI as a leader in TA. We've got that downloadable resource. Send us on your comments and notes about what else do we miss? What do you use AI for that we've missed here? Because again, the more we share, the better we get. We'll be back next week with another great guest on the Hiring Excellence podcast. Until then, take care.